The next presentation should be a presentation of Helen Seitzwick. I don't see her. Okay, so Irene Tuzi, are you ready? Please.
So it should be the next one, okay. Okay, thank you everyone. Good evening. My name is Irene Tuzi. I'm a final PhD candidate at Sapienza University of Rome and Humboldt University of Berlin in social sciences. So today I will be presenting my PhD research, which is coming to an end since I'm finalizing the thesis these days. In particular, I will be discussing the theoretical framework that I have used to analyze my empirical data. And the empirical and the theoretical contribution that I will be giving to the literature. So I will share my screen now. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I will start with presenting a short background of my research. So this PhD study explores the impact of forced migration on gender roles and relations among Syrian refugees in Lebanon and Germany. The main research questions are what kind of transformations do Syrian refugee families experience in Lebanon and Germany in terms of gender roles and relations? What are the main consequences produced by these transformations at an individual, at a relational level? And how do refugees deal with these transformations? About the methodology, I carried out 18 months of fieldwork in Lebanon and Germany. I conducted 90 in-depth interviews with Syrian families and over 30 interviews with institutional actors. I also carried out 4 focus group discussions and participant observation in 2 focused areas in Lebanon and Germany. So the theoretical approach of this study is based on the concept of agency, structure, and reflexivity, and their interaction in refugee studies. So the problem of human agency, or more in general, the problem of free will, has been largely discussed in academia, and is also a key concept in sociology. And it's mainly useful to answer the question, are human beings free to act and to make their own choices? So what is agency? Agency, there is no agreed upon this definition of agency in social sciences. But in my study, I consider agency as a distinctive capacity of all human beings. And I build my study on the definition proposed by Naila Kabir, which, in my opinion, goes beyond the understanding of agency as observable action per se. And in fact, she conceptualized agency as a nuanced set of visible and non-visible actions, the meaning, motivation, and purpose which individuals bring to their activity, their sense of agency, and their power within. So agency can take different forms, including resistance, negotiation, bargaining, deception, manipulation, and subversion, for example. According to Naila Kabir, for example, agency can be understood in positive and negative terms, whereby in the positive sense it is exercised as power to, and in the negative sense it is conceived as power over. When discussing agency, it is ineluctable to mention its relations with structure. So the interplay between the 2 concepts can be understood as an issue of socialization versus autonomy in determining whether an individual is able to act as a free agent or he is driven by social structures. In other words, the question of agency against structure relates to the enduring and enigmatic dispute between freedom and determination. So the interaction between agency and structure is primarily based on three understandings of the discussion. In the first place, the influence of structure over agency, which can be ascribed to social determinism. Then the influence of agency over structure, which falls into voluntarism. And finally, a middle stance where agency and structure are complementary forces, and agency is situated into social structure. So in my thesis, I haven't focused specifically on one single understanding of the debate around the interaction between agency and structure, but I aimed at understanding the specificity of refugees' agency and how agency is exercised in displacement. So is there a specificity of refugees' agency? One necessary premise would be to assert that refugees are not a distinctive category of human beings, of course, so they don't exercise agency in a distinctive way. However, the literature has argued that the specificity of refugees' agency is determined by the specificity of the social, economic, geographic, political, and legal structures that they encounter in their condition of displacement. As a matter of fact, forced migration poses specific structures, specific obstacles to people's everyday life. Some of those can be, for example, the dire living conditions of the refugee camp, people's damaged relationship with their own country, the transformation of social identity of a person when this person becomes a refugee, or the legal status in the country of asylum, for example. However, in my view, limiting the analysis to certain structures can be reductive and would exclude other categories of structures. For example, in Lebanon, only a minority of Syrian refugees live in refugee camps, but this doesn't mean that they don't experience specific dire living conditions. In Germany, most Syrian nationals have been granted a form of humanitarian protection, but not all of them have damaged relationships with their own country. I argue that as displacement experiences are very diverse for Syrian refugees in Lebanon and Germany, it is not possible to ascribe the distinctiveness of refugees' agency within specific structures. I consider that what determines the peculiarity of Syrian refugees' agency is the state of temporary protracted displacement wherein which they act in these two countries. In Lebanon, for example, Syrian refugees' protracted temporary displacement is engendered by the specific legal framework wherein Syrians stand in displacement. They are not accepted as refugees because the state is not a signatory of the 1951 Refugee Convention. And this is a dimension of temporality because it does not allow for resettlement in Lebanon. But at the same time, they are not offered any alternative solution for a safe return to their homes in Syria or for a resettlement in a third country. In Germany, Syrians experience also temporary protracted displacement as they are mostly granted a subsidiary protection. This is a temporary form of protection that does not ensure the same benefits of the refugee status, the full refugee status. For example, the right to family reunification. For this reason, the legal and political framework of Germany also holds Syrian refugees in a dimension of temporality, while being in a permanent displacement. So this condition creates what Victor Turner calls a state of liminality. So a transition from one status to another, which generates violence, humiliation, and reconfiguration. This is a space in the edges of structures, that captures people in a prolonged state of in-betweenness, without necessarily providing the closure of the period of crisis. So in this sense, the condition of liminality functions as a non-structure, because it creates a non-space and a non-time that leaves individuals in a suspended state. So the state of liminality is experienced very differently by Syrian refugees in Lebanon and Germany. In Lebanon, Syrian participants described the condition as a suspended state connected to feeling of disorientation, bewilderment, and loss, daya. In Germany, participants described it as a waiting state, experienced with feelings of anticipation, intizar. For example, a participant in Lebanon, so for Abu Qais, the experience of liminality was really significant. Abu Qais is a 60-year-old man from Daraya who had lost his capacity of providing for his family, as he was doing before in Syria. Now, after forcibly migrating to Lebanon in 2013, he was not able to work anymore. And his daughter, Ward, was now the breadwinner of the family. So my fieldwork explains, provides a photograph of of this sense of suspension and disorientation experienced by Abu Qais. So just to read it very quickly, it felt like a chair, it felt like a furniture. He said, it's not only because he was not working and he feels useful, unable to provide for his family, but also because he's not in the center of the family anymore. So his wife does not sit with him and have lunch with him anymore, and he waits for Ward to come back from work, because she recognized her as the like breadwinner. She doesn't recognize the authority of her husband anymore. In Germany, Abu Muhammad provides the picture of liminality. Abu Muhammad is a participant from Hama. He arrived in Germany in 2015 and he left his wife and children behind in Syria in hopes of reuniting with them through the family reunification system. Unfortunately, because this system can last for many years, when I met Abu Muhammad in 2019, he was still waiting for reunification. For this reason, he felt suspended in a waiting state, bintizar, which he experienced with feelings of continuous anticipation. He said, when I talk to my wife in the evening, we always imagine how our life will be when she comes here. I tell her that we will go to the park to make barbecue or to the cinema. We've never been to the cinema together. Oh my God, I cannot wait for her to be here and for our life to finally start. So the state of temporality within a protracted dimension makes Abu Muhammad experience a suspended life, because his real life will start only after he will be able to reunite with his family, an event for which Abu Muhammad has no control over. And then I asked myself, is there room for reflexivity in refuginess? So reflexivity is a mediating mechanism between structure and agency. It is built on the idea of an inner conversation based on a relation between the individual and the society. But whether this capacity can be applied to displacement largely depends on the specificity of the refugee conditions. As the experiences of displacement are very diverse, it is perhaps not possible to claim that refugees can or cannot practice social reflexivity. In general, we can say that the condition of bare life would not allow for reflexivity to take place, as daily survival are the priorities. But however, because of the state of liminality functions at a non-time and a non-space, various forms of reflexivity are possible. in my view. So to conclude, I suggest that in order to frame a better and more comprehensive understanding of how agency can be exercised in displacement, we need to add the element of time. And so following Ebir, Bayer and Mische, I consider agency in displacement as temporary embedded. In this sense, placing agency in a temporal framework of analysis helps to understand how actors respond to changing circumstances and environments, and how they reconstruct their understanding of their experiences of displacement. Incorporating agency in a temporal framework helps also to see it in a different framework of time. For example, you can incorporate habitual aspects, the capacity of imagining alternative future possibilities, the capacity of contextualizing past habits and future projections. And so the results of my study, theoretical results of my study, are the following. So Syrian refugees in Lebanon and Germany performed different varieties of doing gender in forced migration. The first one, the rejection of traditional gender roles in the private space and the maintainment of those roles in the public space. The dismissal of new gender roles in the public sphere and the acceptance of those in the private sphere. The performance of new gender roles both within the family and within the wider society. And finally, the maintainment of traditional gender roles both inward and outward. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much for your interesting presentation.